One of, if not the most hotly debated topic in the Halo community is what direction should Halo Infinite, and by extension, the rest of the franchise, move in. Should 343 build on the growth of the Halo franchise that has come before, continuing to iterate and subject the gameplay to industry trends? Or should it harken back to the good old days of Halo 2 and 3, trying to recapture what made Halo such a massive hit in the Bungie era? Or is there a world where Halo can be both simultaneously the new and the old? Hey there, I'm Pfhorbear, and today we're going to take a brief look at Halo's gameplay evolution over the years and compare what I expect from Halo Infinite's gameplay versus what I would personally like to see it evolve into. Let's begin. If you were to ask any Halo fan what makes the games great, you would get a myriad of answers. The gunplay, the story, the level designs, the competitive scene, and the sense of community are some of what comes to mind immediately for me personally. But when you strip everything back and look at Halo objectively without the nearly 20 years of nostalgic goggles and highs and lows, Halo is great because of its simplicity. Now, I know that its simplicity is less prominent nowadays, with things like equipment in Halo 3, armor abilities in Reach in 4, and Spartan abilities now in 5 that have been added over the years, changing and evolving Halo's broader gameplay, but it can always be narrowed down to the golden triangle that is Halo's core gameplay: guns, melee, grenades. Even games like Halo 4 and 5, which are arguably the most divisive titles in the franchise, those things still exist, and exist prominently, while adding, and at times maybe too much, to the tried and true formula. Halo Combat Evolved was a modern marvel, though nowadays it is something to laugh at, in that it got the FPS right on a console with the dual stick controls. Fairly standard fare walking and shooting at the same time. Base movement speed was set appropriately so that you didn't zoom across a map at a million miles an hour, but the maps were also designed to be small enough to maneuver quickly on foot. Even the larger maps had vehicles to accommodate their larger sizes and make for incredibly fun gameplay moments. Halo 2 largely followed that same formula. After all, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Halo 2's biggest gameplay iteration was the ability to dual-wield smaller weapons like the newly introduced SMG or the plasma rifle, and in any combination the player sees fit. Halo 3 does nothing short of continue to build on that solid foundation that both Halo CE and Halo 2 built: base movement, no sprint, dual wielding, and now the inclusion of single-use pickups called equipment that had meaningful but not necessarily massive effects on the gameplay. A player could create cover wherever they were with the bubble shield, or confuse the enemy team with the radar jammer. Things that had a limited effect on the moment-to-moment gameplay, but nothing that couldn't be easily removed via Forge or game mode settings, and the equipment never made you feel cheated in an encounter. If someone hit you with a shield drain, sure, they'd likely win that fight, but they wouldn't have it to use when you respawned. Halo Reach, on the other hand, is where things start to get a little bit more complicated. You see, Reach, like previous Halo titles, would not change its base movement speed necessarily, but it did add armor abilities. These armor abilities were in turn the precursors to the loadout system in Halo 4. Halo Reach had its own preset loadouts before each game that could be changed at any point upon death. You could choose from sprint, jetpack, holograms, active camouflage, drop shield, evade, and armor lock. Each one was useful for different situations, and in the campaign they were fun to use and added an interesting layer to the level design. Unfortunately, the multiplayer had them in full effect, and it significantly damaged the experience, in my own opinion. Because every multiplayer level in Halo Reach had to accommodate every single armor ability, the maps were clunky and felt poorly designed. Often you'd feel penalized for not just opting for sprint to move around faster, or jetpack to get a free height advantage on the enemy. By the way, armor lock is bad, and you should feel bad if you use it. Then we move on to Halo 4, which attempted to be a logical evolution to what Reach put into motion. We get more of these armor abilities and a changed, cluttered sandbox along with kill cams, full-on customizable loadouts, complete with perks, ordnance drops instead of weapons on the map, and permanent included sprint, which again changes the flow of the game dramatically. Now, 4v4 sized maps will need to be designed larger to accommodate the inclusion of sprint, or in the cases of maps like Ragnarok and Pitfall, their remakes of Valhalla and the Pit respectively, keeping their previous iterations' map size, but becoming far more cramped than ever before thanks to the emergence of enhanced mobility options. I know you didn't think I'd forget Halo 5. This is arguably 343's best run at multiplayer thus far, but has carryovers from Halo 4 that still bog down the experience. Mainly the cluttered sandbox, there are still too many weapons filling the same roles with Halo 4's introduction of the Promethean weapons, but I digress. Perhaps we'll take a deeper dive into Halo Sandbox evolution in a later video. What Halo 5 does get right is a return to form, at least as close to it as possible without angering the new fans that started with Halo 4. Now, the weapons are back in static spawn locations on the map, gone is the kill cam, ordnance, and armor abilities, and instead we're introduced to Spartan abilities. These are in place of loadouts with armor abilities. They instead now grant every player on the map the same abilities at the same time. No more rolling the dice when trying to figure out how to approach an enemy player. Now, like in Halos 1 through 3, we know that the red team has the same even starts and opportunities as the blue team. The only difference is individual skill level, which falls on the game's matchmaking, which it largely nails. The issue with Spartan abilities is different than that of armor abilities in randomizing, which should be more predictable encounters, but instead gives the players more tools than the job requires. Instead of Halo's Golden Triangle, we now have more of a chartreuse decagon, if you will. You have guns, grenades, melee still, of course, but now, ever since Halo 4, we have Sprint, which thankfully in Halo 5 is now tied to shield recharge, which I am a huge fan of. More on this a little later. Shoulder charge, ground pound, stabilizers, sliding, thrusters, and clambering. Yes, that is 10 core pieces of Halo's gameplay now. Halo 5 has changed the visual representation of zooming with your weapon even, granting the zoom into every weapon and giving it more of an ADS look and cool flashy hologram, while keeping the more traditional Halo zoom mechanic of descoping and no real increase to accuracy, more so just bringing the targets closer to you like it had in the past. Herein lies the problem, and why I'd call Halo 5 the black sheep, because while it is an evolution on Halo's formula, it also tries to bring back a more classic approach to its core gameplay, which I appreciate, and is why Halo 5 is my third favorite Halo multiplayer behind Halo 3 and 2. Look, I think that 343 is incredibly close to nailing it, and coming up with something that rivals Bungie's games. Don't get me wrong, I look at Halo very subjectively myself with those same nostalgia goggles I was talking about earlier, and I will probably always find a reason to argue that Halo 3 was the height of the Halo franchise, even though I know that I am incredibly biased. All of this said, what can we expect from Infinite? From what we've seen so far, it's definitely not afraid to try to recapture that original feel with the new and somewhat classic, twisted with a modern take on the art style. And 343 has said that they are going to move away from chasing industry trends and focus on making a Halo a game that the hardcore fans will want to play for years to come. So what is the logical next step to Halo's core gameplay? Halo Infinite's impending gameplay reveal is on everyone's mind right now, and I am certainly no exception. I have fever dreams about what the game will feel like in my hands this fall and beyond. So, before I tell you what I want it to be, I'm going to go over what I reasonably think we should expect the game to be, how it will play, and what it will throw away, and maybe even add. First, I don't think Halo Infinite is going to get rid of Sprint. As far as I'm concerned, it's here to stay. Whether you like Sprint or not, we have to accept that. I believe that Sprint will be the same, or at least similar to what we've seen in Halo 5, where it is tied to the shield recharge, and like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of that. If we have to have Sprint, that trade-off is very welcome. Next, fewer Spartan abilities. I think, given community feedback, the only Spartan abilities we will definitely see return in Halo Infinite are going to be thrusters, clamber, and stabilizers. The thrusters will work similarly to the way they do in Halo 5, maybe with a bit of a decrease in their range and recharge rate, but clamber and stabilizers will be nearly identical. Think the Halo 5 Mythic Arena settings, but a little bit broader and a little bit more approachable. Continuing on, the reintroduction of equipment. This one is a bit of a shot in the dark, but with the grappling hook leak we looked at last week from November, I think it's extremely likely we will see equipment come back as a single-use pickup like we had in Halo 3, or some evolution of that system. After that, and this one may be a little bit more contentious, is projectile weapons. No more hit scan, other than, of course, the sniper rifle and other similar long-range precision weapons. Halo is on dedicated servers now and has been since the Master Chief Collection, and is only on dedicated servers in Halo 5. We are in the year 2020, so it's reasonable that, like most shooters out there with precision weapons, 343 can nail this and make it feel infinitely better than it did in Halo 3. No pun intended. Finally, Smart Scope, the Halo 5 version of the zoom function that feels more like a Call of Duty style ADS, will remain. I think after 5 years of having it, it's a reasonable expectation and it won't go anywhere. That's what I think Halo Infinite is going to look like. That's what I think we should all expect to see from the new Halo game come this fall. But let's take a look at what I want Halo Infinite to be in a similar order. First, a more classic feel. This means removing sprint. I know some people will hate me for this, and maybe I'll make a video one day on how I think we can have a Halo game that both does and does not accommodate sprint in its map design, but I digress. I don't personally like sprint. I think it takes away from the experience more than it adds, and I'd like to see it axed in favor of a much higher base movement speed. Next, only thrusters remain. No more Spartan abilities other than the trusty thrusties. I like that they added a fun layer to movement and strafing in Halo 5, and I'd be thrilled to see them return in Infinite. Moving on, Halo 3's equipment system re-implemented. I have to say, the first thing I thought when the grappling hook leak first appeared was how happy I was to see them come back. They were never so present in multiplayer that you felt screwed over for not getting it, and any player that had played through the campaign knew automatically what they would do in a multiplayer environment, as well as how to avoid them. I think that this is only additive and doesn't detract from the overall experience at all, and I think it could be easily tuned and completely removed, like in Halo 3, through Forge and game mode options. Next, the same as before, I want projectile weapons. I always thought I wanted hit scan. When Halo 4 was coming out and the community tore the gifs of gameplay that we got out of the revealed Vidoc apart, I was ecstatic because Halo 3's projectile BR was such a bummer when the population started to thin out in late 2008, early 2009, and it only ever got worse. I think that 343 can truly pull off projectiles and give Halo that sharper, more grounded feel with them. If you think hit-scan weapons are the way to go, I'd recommend playing Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer on PC or on Xbox One and telling me how hard it is to land a shot. Spoiler alert, it's not. And I often feel like I get shots off and even kills that I didn't deserve because of the aim-assisted hit-scan battle rifle. Finally, again, I want a classic zoom, not Smart Scope. I know I said that it was cool and flashy earlier, but playing with the Halo 2 BR and Halo 5 feels so natural, and I'd love to see a return, but again, I don't truly expect it to. All of this said, I do highly recommend you play Halo 5's Mythic Arena game types. They're a great starting point to where I'd like to see Infinite go, and maybe even where we'll see it end up starting this fall. Well, there you have it. A look back at how Halo has evolved over the years to what it is now and what to expect in Infinite, as well as what I'd personally like to see it be. Remember, of course, that these are only opinions, suggestions, and what I believe the game will end up looking like. I definitely do not have all of the answers just yet. What do you want Infinite to be? More classic than I want it? A full evolution of Halo 5's gameplay? Do you want armor abilities and the whole 9 yards to make a return? Sound off in the comments, and I'll even read some of my favorite ones off in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe and like the video, share it with your friends even. The support lately has been absolutely unparalleled, and I'm eternally grateful to those of you who have subscribed in the last 3 weeks. The channel has grown from 36 subscribers on May 4th to 217 at the time of this recording, with an insane 14,000 views already in the last 28 days. I couldn't be doing this right now if it wasn't for the fact that so many of you have been so encouraging. Remember, of course, that you can continue the conversation with me on Twitter and in the comments. I am thinking about opening a Discord soon. Let me know what you would think about that, or if you'd be interested in joining. Until next time, be safe and have fun.